Meeting to order. It's 7 o'clock. It seems like we haven't met in a long time, but it's maybe
Speak for
2.5 weeks. Oh, okay. That's true, yes. Sorry. But we have a full agenda. Thank you, everybody, for coming on a truly summer day and after some wonderful summer weather. First item on the agenda is additions, deletions, or changes. And I don't think so. We've got 16 items. And I don't think there's any changes or, and so we'll move right along. Item 3, it's to consider authorizing Cohen, Rath, Dannon, Lynch, and Scharf to conduct Hinesburg tax sale. This is a typical item we occasionally have where it's a tax sale that this starts the process, or it's a piece of the process. I think many times we start the process and the farther it gets and then the taxes get paid and nothing really happens. So do we need to know anything else?
Yeah, so this, as you said, is an annual thing. If you make this motion tonight, it'll just secure that attorney office for the rest of the year. To conduct these tax sales if necessary. But as Phil stated, a lot of times there isn't a need, once they receive notice, which by this was certified mail, Missy's already received several payments, so she's hopeful that there may not be a need for a tax sale, but this just keeps that option open for the remainder of the year.
So the reason it's coming up now is because this is the beginning of a new fiscal year.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
And then additionally, the question I think I had last year, I'll have again this year, is in the letter it states that we still have to have a representative there at a tax sale. Is that decided in the moment or is that designated ahead of time?
Typically you guys have talked about it and
Yep.
someone from the board has volunteered to represent the town at the sale.
Which is why I bring it up.
So
I
that was.
nominate Phil.
I think we see what's happening. And
Yeah.
if it's raining, Tom says he'll go. So.
I just wanted to make everybody aware we still have
Yeah.
to do that if we choose to move forward with anything.
Okay.
And this law firm has done this in the past.
Yes.
So.
So I'll make the motion to approve the contract with Cohen, Rath, Dannon, Lynch, and Scharf to conduct tax sale if necessary.
Second it?
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that's 4. And I should have noted that Jeff is on a vacation, so he's not with us tonight. I mean, he has access to the packet, and I didn't hear anything of any particular concern of his, so, and I don't see anything that critical that we might take action on tonight. So hopefully he's having a good vacation. Next item on the agenda is authorizing the town clerk and treasurer, that's Missy, to be a signer on the People's United Bank account. I think this is one we've had, but she's never been a signer.
Well, yes, I mean, it's just something because it changed ownership however many years back. Apparently that wasn't a step that was ever done, and the bank just happened to notice it on one thing, and so we're just doing this as a formality. So what you're gonna do is make a motion to have the board chair sign it, and then Phil, I'll have you, after the meeting, sign that.
Authorize her as a
Yeah.
signature on our account.
And it's going to be, so it's a business deposit account with certified resolution, so she can't decide to open or close an account on her own. It would have to have board approval.
Does that need to go in the motion?
Yes, I'm gonna give you a lot of text to do in the motion, no.
Could you just read what needs to be in there and one of us can actually make the motion?
I think you can just simply make it as a motion let me just check and see where the signing portion is. I don't think you need to note that it's gonna be a business deposit account of certified resolutions. piece,
So-
I think, just to authorize the town clerk and treasurer to be the signer on the People's United
But
Bank
Phil,
account.
we need to
And then-
authorize Phil to
Phil
sign.
Yeah,
authorize
and
Phil.
Phil will sign as
Yeah.
All right,
chair.
I'll give
Yeah.
this a shot. So I'll make a motion to authorize the board chair, Phil Pouch, to sign the paperwork through the People's Bank, authorizing the town clerk and treasurer to be the signer on the People's United Bank account.
Okay,
Second.
all right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, great. Item 5, and this is to consider, I think Lyman Park is here, Sherry and Amy is here to request the town supply some culverts for some significant work you're doing around drainage around your buildings.
Yes.
Does that sound good? You can come on up to the hot seat.
Come on,
The guest of honor seat.
we're doing this together.
And also to just, so in our packet, we have a memo from Sherry, sort of describing what they're doing. We have some engineering drawings by Engineering Ventures. And then the request that the town provide culverts, which the memo, I think, describes the culverts are on town property. I think that's right.
Yep.
And, you
So
know,
there's actually two requests. The first is, since the culverts are on our town property, we need your permission to do this work, which includes replacing the culverts. So there's that piece. And then the other piece is the requesting that there's funding from the town to replace the culverts that are on town property.
which would be, the funding you're requesting is the town to provide the culverts
Yes,
and to
Yes.
do,
so to pay for the culverts and then we would pay for the labor.
yeah,
to-
and the excavation and
Yep.
all that.
Yep,
Yes. Yep.
And you've got significant engineering drawings that show how things are gonna go. And I think, you know, my only question as I read this is like, you know, I'm not sure if the town is, and we could do it either way. I'm not sure if the town is responsible to provide the culverts, or this is a request and the town might consider doing it since it's town property. I'm not sure which one, and maybe it doesn't matter, so.
I had a similar question, and in my mind, I went to road foreman and wondering if there was any input there.
Right, and so, because he's been away this week.
Which I assumed was the
haven't
answer.
gotten a chance to confirm with him. He was going to be here tonight. For reasons, but is not able
Able
to.
to, yep.
Yeah.
So, and the culverts are not that big. Are they described in the,
12-inch, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, one is an 18-inch and one is a 12-inch.
What are the lengths?
Oh, that's a good question.
the culverts come, when you order them, they come in 20-foot sections, so you have to order 20-foot, even if it's a 10-foot.
Right.
yeah,
So one of them is, if I recall, is a 10-foot section, and the other one is 20 feet, I believe. I have it written down right in front of me. Yep, 20 feet and 10 feet.
yeah.
So we'd be paying for 40 feet of culvert,
Right.
but
And I'm curious, what's the total cost of your project? Do you have that on the top of your head? Just,
We're still waiting for the final estimate because there's the plans that you have are for the civil engineering, the drainage piece. There's also, because some of the drainage work is going to be going underneath porches and decks, what it means to preserve the decks and porches and.
so it's a significant project. I mean, based on the
Yeah.
Oh, it
engineering
is.
drawings,
Yeah.
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 so the structural elements we haven't been provided yet.
Okay. And is the plan to go forward, I mean, assuming it's, you know, that you've got the money in your HOA, condo association, is the plan to move forward? And this is just, really, the culverts is just a small piece of it,
Oh, yeah.
of the project?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. The drainage, everything has settled over the years, and we are living on swampland. I had cattails growing in my garden last year. We're just on clay, and the structures, especially the smaller building A, we're really in water a lot of the time. So,
And there is standing water between those two buildings, so that's a real red flag for
Yeah.
us.
And the two culverts are on the top, C2 and C6.
that's
there.
correct, yep.
And those are in Lyman Field, the field.
Yeah, so there was significant drainage improvements done to Lyman Field, I think, this spring. This spring, yeah, this spring. Will C2 impact that at all, or is that going basically into that drainage swale that's there?
Yeah, it's all going into the drainage swale. And that's an existing culvert. It's smaller, it's gotten clogged.
Yep.
And any of the water that these two culverts are dealing with, other than perhaps some water coming from the parking lot, that's the Lyman Park parking lot, the impact's not going to be huge as far as drainage. It's just moving water out of the...
Right, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that when this gets done, that corner of Lyman Field
Oh, yeah.
is properly drained the way it should be, and not any more going onto the field, because that was
Yeah,
quite a
'cause
project
it's
to get
so
that
much
dry.
lower
Yeah.
in the swale and where the field is.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
Yeah, and the culverts cross the path, the designated, I don't even think it's a right-of-way, it's just a
It's an
town
easement, I
path,
think.
a town easement.
So that's where people walk?
Yeah, yep. And the C6 culvert has actually come out of the ground. It is out of the ground, and people have to jump over it to walk on the path. So, the other one is just, it's still in the ground, but it's clogged. It's entirely clogged, and it might even be like collapsing in some sections.
All right. I think, I guess from my perspective, I'm pretty positive for this. It seems reasonable. We're protecting our field. But a couple of things. One is I'd like to run it by Mike Anthony, our road commissioner. He would be the one getting us the culverts. And two, I would ask him if he wants to at least oversee that the installation of the culvert was done properly, and have him look at the drawing and say that all looks good as far. We wouldn't want to do something that he thought was totally inappropriate, but it looks like it probably is with the engineering firm doing the work. And then my next question, and it's just for you, is are there some, is there an impact to some stormwater requirements? And is that something you guys should, I think, perhaps talk with the town just to make sure that, you're not doing anything that's gonna, I would hope the engineering firm would have thought that.
Yeah, and I
Maybe
talked
not,
with,
maybe yes, I have no idea.
yeah, I talked with Mitch and Suzanne
Okay,
back in April, just to see if anything needed permitting, just to
yeah,
deal, and they said no.
okay,
It's-
so
'cause
that
it's-
answers that.
Yeah, their language, it's basically where the original intent of the property and how it was graded, we're basically trying to put it back to what it was originally done. And the settling is what's impacting the lack of drainage now because of how the settling has happened.
And in regards to your other questions, the other thing that just worth noting is the quotes for the culverts that we gave you are if we had to pay for them, so you guys would
Oh, I
have
didn't
a.
see the quote.
It's in
Is it in there?
Yeah.
$7 or something.
For the two,
Yeah,
for the
it's
two
right.
things? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
So the municipal rate would be less
hopefully,
expensive.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
And this is through Ferguson Waterworks.
okay.
So I had the same comment, mine was, I don't want to stand in the way of it. I see somebody trying to make improvements. I want it to happen. That said, to my inexperienced eye with such things, this seems reasonable, but the person who represents us in such matters is our road foreman.
Yeah.
And it's, for lack of anything else, just out of respect for him, as to, we're going to ask him his opinion and to do a thing, he ought to see the thing.
Sure.
And I would ask, that doesn't hold us up if we tell you next week after does it, after he's looked at it?
Their next meeting is next Thursday,
Yeah.
a week from today.
So
Okay.
the hope
Yeah.
would be we would make a decision
Okay.
at that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fine.
I don't think it would hurt either maybe to call CSSU Kurt Proul, who is kind of in charge of maintaining that space now. And he kind of oversaw the work that was done last year,
That's a good point.
just to tell him what's going on and make sure everything is done to their.
What was it, CSSU?
The school
The
district at
CVU.
CVU, he
Oh,
works
the
out of
school
CVU.
district's responsible for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
For that
interesting.
field, yeah.
They are now
We-
since the
we
merger,
own
yeah.
it.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's town
Well, that's
property,
interesting.
Yeah,
but
they maintain it.
And what was his name again?
Kurt Proul, Proulx, I believe.
Yeah.
Alex. Okay.
Kind of like Annie, the author,
Hmm?
like the author. Annie, yeah.
Right, yeah. So many people involved. Okay.
Which is why we have these conversations, right? You know, it's
Yes.
just like you didn't even know,
Right.
like, and like I didn't think of it, Tom did, so I'm happy to have
That's
these
great.
conversations in this way.
I'm sure there won't be an issue, just keep everybody in the loop and
Oh, yeah.
everybody's happy.
Absolutely.
So, as Sherry said, we need approval for the project itself from you
Yeah.
guys, and then ultimately the decision
are we
about the
willing to pay
culverts.
for the culverts
Yep.
that go on town property?
Yep.
Right, okay. So I think, so we do meet next week, and we think Mike will be available to do
believe
that?
so, or- yeah.
So that'll be our hope, that he'll be
Okay.
back. He's got a family issue that he's working with, so we'll get him back, get his opinion. He doesn't necessarily even have to come if he's like, yeah, it looks good.
Right.
We'd be able to
Simple.
move forward, and if not, we would certainly tell, why or what's holding us up, so.
Okay. So, I'm just curious, the overall project approval would happen at that meeting as well?
Yes.
After
Yes, we
you've
would
talked
do
to the
both,
foreman?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, that's fair.
seems to
And
make
as Tom
sense.
said, it'd be good to coordinate with CVU, just so that if the school district, not just CVU, but HCS, they use that field, so
Okay.
that way, for when your work is happening, it's not conflicting with any of their activities that they're
Okay.
having on there.
And if you want to contact me via email before the meeting, and by then I'll kind of know how things are going, and if, you might not even have to come to the meeting if you don't want,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
Well,
That-
that would
leave
be
it up to
Amy,
you.
because I will be in the woods
Okay.
paddling
All right.
and not to be disturbed.
Right, I better write down when that meeting is. Thursday?
7 o'clock,
Here?
yep.
Same time, same place.
Okay. Next Thursday. Phil. So I would reach out to you beforehand to find out if I need to come. Okay,
No, I mean, normally you would reach out to Renee, but she's gonna be out of town next week, so.
okay.
But you can still, I can still work through email.
No.
Okay.
How would you like her to do it then? You wanna-
Well, it's up to you.
Yeah,
If you wanna
you
do it
can go
directly to
through
you?
me. Yeah.
Go
Okay.
through you,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Easy enough.
Vacation is vacation, Renee.
Yes, that's
Write
right,
that down.
yeah.
Yes. Turn off the computer.
Send you paddling with her.
There you go.
Maybe I should.
In Canada, you're welcome.
Good,
Hey, thank you very much.
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right, are we running a little early?
Are we complaining?
No, but the next item is the bridge and road standard, so.
Right.
Yeah, so Mike's not here. And these are done basically every year,
They
right?
are. This is just a new version than you've seen in the past.
And so we would be signing saying, yes, we approve these standards are the ones we would use. And so again, I think we need to have Mike in the loop and
Yeah.
assuming he's okay with it. We
Yeah.
have good road standards.
So what they've done this year, it's the template, there's different sections of it. There's some sections that you have to approve and be part of our, what we agree to because it's related to the municipal roads general permit or something. But there are certain sections that you could opt not to. But again, you're gonna wanna take that feedback from Mike and discuss with him because they've worked with VLCT, they've worked with the CCRPC, and and the state and various folks to develop these. So But I would encourage you to talk with him.
Is this something, do you know whether Mike's been aware of these
Yes,
things
he
coming
has been
down?
aware of
Okay.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not surprised.
yeah. So, this was more in your packet, just to sort of give you an opportunity to read them over, look through them. If you develop any questions, you can certainly just email Mike next week and get those questions
And
answered.
in there is the link to the A&R maps. I don't know if anybody
Yes.
has seen those, but those are just unbelievable good resources, and they're basically Google Maps. But there are just layers upon layers upon layers of things. So you want to see Class 3 wetlands, or you want to see power lines, or you want to see tax. Almost all of the tax maps are on them. I mean, there's just a lot of good information. Yeah, that's it. And
When does this have to be signed by?
By the end of this month.
Okay.
so
So
ideally next week,
next
yeah.
week.
So is everybody okay with holding off on that? All right. So the next item, are we waiting for Anthony?
Oh, yes, we are quite early.
We are,
So
that's okay.
why don't we move down to the tax rate?
10, yeah. So we're gonna skip,
Look at that.
we're gonna skip 7, which is approving, it's an annual thing, I think since 2014, the police service contract with St. George. There were some tweaks, some slight edits to it, and Anthony Cambridge will, the chief will be here. The next item is allocation of the water and wastewater pool. And we'll hold off because Eric should be here. And then the next item is the official map and some zoning changes, and Alex will be here, so.
Yes.
Number
Yeah.
10, consider setting the FY '20 tax rate, and this comes with good news, I think.
Yeah.
Do you want
Certainly.
Tell us.
There, I put a little memo in your packet today just to sort of explain how it differs from last year's rate. So the proposed municipal tax rate is 0.5296, whereas last year it was 0.5090, which is an increase of just over 2 cents per $100 of assessed value. So this would mean increase in taxes on a $100,000 house of $20.60 for the year, for just the municipal portion of the tax. And if you look down further in the memo, these on the $100,000 home, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, this is the increase in municipal tax from FY19. And then further down in the memo, I do the entire combined property tax, was combined municipal and education from FY19. So a $400,000 home, you're going to be paying $92.80 more in taxes than you did last year. At the time of budget season, we were predicting very little grand list growth. And so based on what our proposed budget was, it was going to increase the tax rate more significantly. So we were opting to use some of our unallocated fund balance. However, I think if you just look at this memo, I don't know that there's a need. In fact, I would recommend against using the unallocated fund balance, because that sort of gives a false indication of where we're really at. And then next year, if we don't use the fund balance, it's going to look like our tax rate potentially could be a lot more, even if it's a small increase. So if we used the 125,000 that we were proposing at budget time, that would decrease this by 2 cents off the tax rate approximately. So it would bring us back into line with exactly about where we were last year. But that means next year, if we're wanting to do any more things and more capital improvements, that just gets us further away and looking like a more significant increase than it was this year. it's certainly something that you guys can decide either way. Just wanted to sort of lay this out for you so you can see what it is.
Is there anything, as far as using the fund balance, that you've described and given a good explanation of, here's what you're thinking on this? And was any of it based on the fact that now you're a little concerned about using the fund balance?
No, not at all, but
The
I'm
budget seems to be
also,
running where we expect it to be.
I also would like you to consider what you've always done, or with the fund balance, is you've only used it to offset the tax rate. Another way you could use it is to pay for some of the larger capital projects that need to happen, or things that need to be done. So instead of showing that in budget time as, the 125,000 on the revenue side because you're using unallocated fund balance, you could show it on the town meeting warning or somewhere in the budget that you're going to use 150,000 or 200,000 of unallocated fund balance to pay for a sidewalk project or
Some capital
something,
piece.
some capital thing that's in our general fund. So you couldn't use from water or wastewater, anything from there, but you could
But it would be for
apply
something
it.
new you're suggesting as opposed to something already existing to pay it down sooner.
Well, yeah, or, I mean, you can choose to do it. There isn't a limitation of how you do it, so it could be used towards paying debt. A debt, it could be used towards any type of capital projects, work on the town hall.
Yeah.
Any repairs that need to be done, repairs to sidewalks, anything.
Yeah.
But as long as you show the voters, and the voters have an opportunity
To comment.
Yeah.
comment or vote on it. So it's either in the town meeting warning or in the budget, but
I
the
think
town meeting
it has
warning
to
would be
be
the
sort
best.
of warned, because it's almost like, you've collected the tax money, now you have to say, well, we
you
didn't
doing
spend
with
it the
it?
way we thought, now here it is, and is it okay for us to spend it in this way?
Right.
Yeah.
So this is just for, for next year. We didn't use,
Any last year.
we didn't use any
Right.
last year or this year,
Even
so,
though last year, I think the same thing, we thought we
Same
were gonna
thing.
use some, but we were in better shape, so we said,
Absolutely.
let's hold off.
so I'm just trying to show that there is another way that you could be using it, and we could be trying, rather than having to, take out loans or bonds, perhaps we could be using some of this, for capital projects that need to be done.
Or debt. I mean,
Or debt.
conceivably, there could be some
Absolutely.
debt in front of us that said, hey, we can knock this out, and,
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Doesn't sneak up on you like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
truck replacement that we had
Yeah.
to do.
So as long as it's done in a way so that the voters have an option and, are being able to decide that this, yes, we agree that for this money to be used for that purpose.
I see it as either debt or, in this order, debt, deferred maintenance, or new capital,
Yeah.
in that order.
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
And I do take note of your point about up and downing the tax rate.
Right.
And being sensitive to, yes, it's going up, but let's trend it instead of
right,
peaks and valleys
Right.
for folks.
yeah,
So I think that's a conservative way to look at it. The tax rate has been basically approved, there was an expectation that this is what the tax is going to be.
yeah.
So, and it was approved, so.
The budget was approved and we gave what we proposed, what we.
Right, what we expected
yeah,
it to
the
be.
anticipated it would be, yep. But the tax rate is never set until this time of the year.
How's everybody feeling about this?
Yeah, I like that idea. Makes a lot of sense to me.
What's your reservation, Phil?
No, I don't. I'm just
Still
sort
thinking,
of looking at
yeah.
Tom and saying,
No,
how are
I
you
think the
thinking?
way Renee explained it makes perfect sense to me.
It'd be nice to say no tax, that
It
would
would.
be nice, but it may be false hope.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems more transparent this way, really.
Yeah,
I think there'd be nothing greater than to just pay off
Some debt. Yeah.
you know.
It really depends on the interest.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that we must, but it sure feels good
Or to
to
at least consider it. Look
at
at
least
what's there,
consider it.
So,
we have the ability to consider that.
That's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
either way, it's kind of a wash.
I know.
Right.
It's just a more direct way of saying, hey, we're gonna just pay this off and maybe save a little bit of interest.
right.
And quite honestly, seeing the forklift here on the slate roof this past week,
Yeah.
and knowing that we haven't really put any money aside for that,
Yeah.
and knowing that I don't want town hall to fall down on my watch.
Right. So,
It's important
right.
for those kinds of projects that the whole town could really.
You got a
It'd be fine.
grant for that, didn't you?
Well, we got a grant for the assessment of the entire town hall and sort of to prioritize what should be focused on first. The roof was the biggest thing. So,
I thought you got a grant for the roof as well, because it's historic.
not a grant for the roof itself, for that assessment.
Okay.
But then, because we did that, we could be eligible for other grants for larger projects. Not for this one. This was just sort of an inspection and then replacing more, some of this slate roof. But once we actually replace the entire roof, potentially there could be some grant funding.
Nice.
Hopefully that's years out, as long as we stay on top of this maintenance. So what they did, they had to do approximately replace 50 pieces of slate on the roof. They said that our roof is in expected condition for the age it is. It's the south side that had the most damage because the sun hits it the most. So that's where they replaced the majority of the slate. But, as long as we stay on top of it, they anticipate it's going to last for quite a bit longer, but we should start saving now incrementally for that replacement. And they estimated at this point today to replace that roof would be $138,000 just for the slate, the scaffolding rental $46,000, and a forklift $25,000.
There's your 200 right there.
But that's today. That's going to
Right.
increase by the
Amazing how
time
these numbers
we're
add
actually
up.
ready to do it. So it's a good time to start saving for those type
Sure.
of larger capital projects.
And I imagine a replaced one would have a life of 50 years, or?
Hopefully more. I'm not sure, somewhere in that, yeah.
And there isn't
As long as
anything
it's
locking
maintained.
us into that it has to be slate, is
Right.
there? I mean, it could be standing
Well,
seam.
Right, there's-
the grant funding probably would if we did that.
For the historic
Yeah.
Yeah.
piece of it,
Yeah.
but, so.
Okay.
But-
Anyway,
So we
got it.
have we'll need if we're gonna go with the tax rate, we need a motion to set if you scan down, we would know the number.
Oh. What do you want to get?
Remove the side thing or whatever.
So,
I can get to the actual tax rate summary if you want that. Oh.
sure.
Yeah, there you go.
So, this is your combined, so the town tax rate,
5296.
yeah, the town tax rate would be the 0.5288, and then you add the local agreement rate, which is the veterans exemption of over 10,000. So you add the 8 to that, it's 0.5296 would be the,
So the motion would be to set the fiscal year 20 tax rate at 0.5296 cents.
I'll make that motion.
No, 52.96 cents.
0.52.
0.5296.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, you had it right.
Yeah, yeah.
You had it right.
Not cents.
I'll second it.
All right.
You're not a
Is
fraction.
that okay? You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't want to be off on the decimal point.
Right.
Any more discussion?
It would be good, I guess, going forward to see what things we can pay off and see what potential uses there are
Yeah,
for the
Yeah.
fund balance.
right, absolutely.
And when we start budget
That will be part of the budget
time in
process.
October, and for sure, we'll be that much, into the budget a little bit, and we'll know.
I just wanted to
we'll
plant
have a
that
little bit,
seed in your
yeah.
minds now, so you can be thinking
Okay.
in terms of that.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye, so the motion passed.
All right, we
All right,
Back.
so that was number 10, and we'll scoot back to number 7. Consider approving police services contract with St. George.
Thank
Why
you
don't
for
you
being
come up
ahead
here?
of time.
Chief? So this is something we've done since 2014, I believe, and Anthony's made a few, some minor changes onto the rate a little bit. Maybe you could explain, what's changed, I guess.
So we pay they pay us 50 per hour for full police services. I mean, not full, for traffic enforcement. And it was approximately $33 per case. And the $50 would continue if we arrested someone, and $11.75 per traffic stop. So if we did 4 traffic stops in the hour that we're charging them, it was doubling the money, and that money was going to Shelburne. So now that we're not being charged from Shelburne, I mean, we are, but we're not. We're taking off potentially the $33 and the traffic stop money, and I factored it with Doug, and the original cost to us technically was $42 an hour for the officer. That includes everything. That includes the total cost of an officer, and if something happens and we're in St. George, we're breaking to come back to Hinesburg anyway, so we're not losing anything. With the Shelburne dispatching, with our set rate now at $40,000, it's coming to about $48 or $49 per hour, our cost to St. George. So we were potentially making a couple of extra dollars per hour. We're still making $1 or $2, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's really all profit anyway, because it's time that we're theoretically waiting for a
Still on
call.
duty.
We're
Right.
still on duty,
Yeah.
so realistically, we're making $50 an hour no matter what way you cut it. It just doesn't seem fair to charge St. George all those fees if we're not actually being charged them as we were in the past. So that's the only, other than the dates of the contract, it's the only thing that really gets changed. And then there's the agreement that if we do arrest somebody, although the $33 fee is not there anymore because we're not punching a case, if we do arrest somebody, they will continue to pay the $50 per hour until the person is processed. So we're leaving St. George, we're bringing that person back to Hinesburg. It happens often. I mean, when we're there, a couple days, we'll get somebody usually for criminal DLS or something, and we have to bring them back to Hinesburg, and that typically takes about an hour. So that's another hour that we're charging them, but we're not in St. George.
And how is it going as far as with the officers and with the schedule, this overall coverage of St. George, small amount of hours? Does it go over well with the department? I mean, there's no problems, and it feels okay for everybody?
Everybody seems to like it. I mean, traditionally it was me and Jeremy, and I would do if I had time during the day, and he would do it if he had time at night. So usually those hours pick up in the summer, and once I get a little more settled in, I'll start picking it up a little more in St. George as well. So it's something we like doing, and it's extra, but it's not.
Yeah.
So.
And is there a set schedule, or is it sort of, I don't know, feels a little slow tonight, maybe we'll go there, or is it sort of, gets part of the routine?
No, it's, I mean, there's been times where they've asked us to, can you help us out? We've had some complaints or whatever. But for the most part, it has been where we will hit certain areas of Hinesburg as problems arise, or as we feel, sometimes you just get a feel for traffic is moving faster in a certain area. and the same thing is true with St. George. We'll target St. George when we feel, if we've been there even one day, that seems to slow traffic down for the rest of the month. I know that sounds odd, but it does. And you guys probably know, driving through St. George,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
come to some of our areas, the cemetery or Goose Creek, and traffic slows down immediately because they're
Yeah,
worried
it
we're
does,
there.
yeah, right. And the
So-
speed limit drops significantly as you enter St. George from
Here, there aren't
down
many
2A.
places to be other
Yeah.
than those two.
No, no, it's definitely helping, and it's maintaining our relationship with St. George as
Yeah.
well.
Okay.
So that relationship with St. George and sort of the day-to-day operational thing, there isn't a chief there. So who is the person or people or entity that you interact with to check in other than once a year to say, here's the contract?
There really hasn't been. Whoever is at town hall,
Yeah.
we've had a good relationship over the years, and then every once in a while we've been contacted by a select board member saying, hey, good job, thank you. But for the most part, it's just been us billing them, and they've been very appreciative over the years, though. The people that I have talked to, and the residents absolutely love it. Everybody I've talked to has been positive about it. I mean, because the majority of the population of St. George is in that area, right there, and so they're feeling the traffic come through there. So they're grateful that we're there.
We have a very good relationship with St. George between the fire and police. I mean, it's a good working relationship.
And what's the process for this contract? So if we like this and we give it an okay this evening, has St. George already seen it, or will they see it next?
So
and
they'll
then
see it next.
They'll see it
Yes.
next. Okay. And then they'll either accept it or
Yeah,
not,
so
or
if
counter
you
or
guys
whatever
decide
they'll
to
do.
approve it tonight or
Yeah.
the next meeting, then you would sign it. Then we'd send it to St. George. Their select board would do the same thing you've done
Yeah.
tonight. And ultimately, if they sign it, then it's in motion.
But what I'm hearing, I guess, is that you're not anticipating any substantial feedback.
Well, it's lowering the cost of
Right.
Yeah,
them,
that's what I'm
essentially,
saying. It's
and
like, this is good to
and-
go.
even when
it
we've come
sounds like.
close to getting to the contract end, where we've maxed out on the hours that we can,
Yeah.
they've told us, keep going. We want you. They're always making a profit. There's never been a time where the amount that we've charged them has been greater than the profit they've made in ticket revenue.
Yep. There it is.
All right, I mean, normally we would sort of hold back on a decision like this. I'm not sure, I mean, I would feel comfortable, but I'm not sure about
I would
everybody
too.
else. We've done this every year. It's just a slight change. We're getting advice that it's not impacting services to Hinesburg. And this is a model, I think, that is one that some have encouraged us and others to be a little bit more regional when we can. So,
One of the differences between the way we do our contract and the way other departments do it is when we go to St. George, we're working. We're not just driving around. There are a lot of departments that will charge for a contract and they'll just sit there for an hour and say they were there, and that's when the town ends up losing money. If we're there for an hour, we're at least stopping one car, which would pay for us being there. So I think that's the difference between us doing it and somebody else doing it.
okay. So, I guess it sounds like we would need a motion that says, approve the police services contract as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Okay, and then who has to sign it? Just
All of you.
all of us
Yeah.
would need to sign it.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye, so that motion passed. Thanks for coming and
Thank you.
helping us. And,
Thank you.
And looking at the, the costs and the fact that we're able to actually reduce it and stay the same, stay good, and it's good for them too, so thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll sign that too.
Yeah.
All right. Next item on the agenda is with Eric. Okay, so consider approving annual allocation, the pool designation. That's not an actual swimming pool. It's a pool of water or wastewater, right?
Boy,
Water in your pool or wastewater in your pool. So this is an annual thing the select board's done, and I think we're getting better and better at it. I mean, I think we sort of struggled a couple years ago with it. And so this just says in what categories would we allocate any capacity we have so that going forward in our normal mode of operation, if somebody was to ask us for allocation, we could look to see that we've divided it up into different categories. But this year seems a little different, so.
It is.
It shows that water, we're actually in the negative, so, which wasn't something we talked about, I don't know, several months ago. The last time we allocated, there was money left, there was water left over, so I was surprised to see that. We also have the wastewater, which is, right now, there's no capacity issue with that, so.
Right.
There's less concern.
Right.
So do you want to
Sure.
talk about?
So on the the wastewater's we'll do the wastewater quick
Sure.
'cause it's easy. This past year was a little drier than the previous year, so we actually gained wastewater capacity, even with more allocations. But we ended up with 10,000 gallons more wastewater capacity just because the previous year was such a wet year and last year was not. That was that.
As simple
So
as that, yeah.
it's that simple.
And the standard that you use, is it a industry standard
Yeah,
or
it's
a
used-
one that other municipalities do?
It's the state. That's how the state runs it.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're following the
your
state
annual
rules.
flow, and
And they don't take into account that one year is like really low.
right. And I'm going to talk to them
rainfall.
about that. We discussed that as a staff, and I'm going to talk to them about the possibility of doing it on a rolling 3-year average
Mm-hmm.
because things are so volatile.
Yeah.
So,
And you don't want to fool yourself.
Right. Yep. So that's the discussion we'll be
Do
having.
we have to use their number? What happens if we were more conservative?
No, we don't. We can come up with our own systems as long as it's, like I said, more conservative.
As long as it's
Right.
more conservative.
Right.
If we looked at our water and decided, oh, we do have allocation, that would be against the rules?
I'd have to check that because their rules they've had some changes, and that's actually partially where we got to where we're at. So a few years ago, actually while we were going through the monster leak,
Yeah.
the state actually, and I'm not sure why, but they got rid of their 12-hour pumping rule for water. It's it's up to you.
How many hours you want to pump?
Right. And at the time I was pumping 20 to 22, sometimes having to turn off the treatment facility side of it and run straight pump because we were throwing so much into the wetland behind Green Street. And we didn't know where it was going, but that's where it went. And at that point, it's like, 15 hours a day is a pretty comfortable spot. So that's what we chose as our amount. This past spring, discussing with our hydrogeologist, she taught me into the fact that that's not a great idea. 12 is really a good place to be, regardless of the state's rule. So that's a large portion of where we're at. If we rolled back from 15 hours to 12, that accounts for 40,000 gallons of what we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, 3 hours and 12, yeah. That's
Right, that's
20%.
40,000.
Yeah.
That's 40,000 gallons.
Yeah.
We've also gained, hold on, I can write it down here. Yeah, we gained 20,000 allocation over that past year.
We've allocated 20,000.
We've allocated 20,000.
Yeah.
And last year we used 10,000 gallons more per day than we did the previous year. So a lot of our, changes are on paper versus, actual flows. And the actual flow changes just actually changed last week. We had a water break that became a big break at 6:20 some odd. It's awesome having our system over there because you can see right when it happens at 6:20 Friday morning. But it's evident by after we fixed it that it was a small break for several months. So our increased flow over last year that we had attributed to increased business flows because the expansion at Smoke and Cure, the expansion at the breweries. We said,
Part of it was leakage.
That must be our flows.
Yeah.
It's not. This past week, we are down to just over 120,000 gallons a day.
Right. So out of the things you've described
Right.
that have changed, one is we went from 15 to 12-hour pumping.
Right. That's the big one.
And so that's the one that brought us, if we took that away, we would have what we expected to allocate on our numbers.
Right.
Because when we allocated the last time, there was something left over, and we
There's a little
said
left over.
a small amount, but if somebody came with a
Right.
mom and pop, you
Right.
know, expansion or an apartment or a two-house, whatever, something small, we could limp by.
Right.
Now we can't.
Well, you don't have to, I mean, by regulation, you don't have to accept the 12 hours if you wish to have a small amount. That's the recommendation hydrologically. But, right.
So other than that, what you're saying is that's the change. I mean, there were some leaks and
right,
things that
there's-
you talked about, but
But
they all
that's the change,
wash.
and we allocated 20,000 gallons of water.
Right, but we knew we were doing that.
Right. Right.
So the only change really is the change
Is the
from
hours.
15 to 12.
Right.
I'm not saying we should do one thing or the other. I'm just feeling the impact of not having anything to give out to somebody
Oh, I
who
hear
needs
ya.
a two-bedroom
Yep.
apartment.
Yep. And that's something that if you folks felt it was worth doing, I wouldn't pitch a fit at all. That's not, we've got, I'm presenting
Right.
the
And what was
stuff-
recommended by,
Right.
is it Cindy?
Cindy.
Yes.
Cindy Sprague?
But if we wanted to have a little bit of flexibility operationally, in my professional opinion, I think we could handle it.
Alex, you happen to be here and you're listening. Is there a concern to you that we don't have a drop of water to allocate?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The same concern you have.
All right.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. But until this new well proves itself out and actually comes online, eventually we will run out.
Yeah.
Not just on paper, but for
Right,
real.
in real.
So
Yeah.
it's going to happen at some point.
Right.
I just didn't expect that it was gonna happen
Right.
this year, just like yourself.
Other people?
I would tend to really support the view of the hydrogeologist. It's like, we have to think long-term, and if she recommends that we do it at 12 hours a day, that's probably going to be sustainable over the long term, whereas 15 hours a day might not be.
If that's what her reasoning is.
Yes.
And
And my thought is, if, I mean, I would like to hear her reasons for it, because, and I, she's not here, so I don't want to speak for her, but
Right.
she might be saying, what's best for the well?
right. Which
And,
was
and
best
what
for
we
the-
need to do is,
aquifer.
what's best for the well, the town,
Right.
But this was the
situation.
same figure that the state had
Previous.
recommended
Right.
previously.
And they
so-
changed their mind. They decided
They
it
didn't-
might be too restrictive, it sounds like.
Well,
They opened it up.
Right. I think they made it more flexible for, yeah. They made
And
it more
just
flexible.
because the state says this is the rule, it doesn't mean it's necessarily
Prudent.
the best rule.
Right.
It would be really good to know what the reasons are.
Right. I mean, the hydrogeologist,
Oh, we
is-
respect her
she's worried about the
opinion.
aquifer.
Yeah,
That's where she's at. On the other hand, a lot of our numbers, as we well know, are paper. I mean, you're allocating it 140, 150 gallons per bedroom on water, which is not how it proves out in reality. So some of these paper numbers that we're counting are very inflated.
but, I mean, those are adjusted over time.
Right. And as they come online,
But not on-
they drop.
But right now,
Not
those
on these.
Yeah.
allocations that are not used but
Yes,
allocated.
are fully allocated.
Almost
and we-
42,000 gallons.
Yes.
And we know that will, in
Yeah.
reality, when they come
Will
online,
drop.
probably be, I mean, I'm just guessing, but 30 or 25
Right,
even?
exactly.
So there's actually more
That's what I'm
capacity
saying.
there than, I mean, we know there's more capacity there. It's just
Exactly.
the paper exercise brings us to this
Right.
Yeah.
place.
And frankly, last year, we approved all of the old allocation
Yes.
extensions.
Yeah,
I would suggest that where we're at now, that maybe as we go forward, we're more critical.
of just
know,
approving and, yeah.
Yeah,
and-
if you're
and I
not,
think
if you're
we-
not, if you're not moving forward, sorry, you're
Right.
done.
You're gonna lose your allocation, yes. So a big portion of this is, we know, will not be built in 1 year
Right,
when we go back for and look at this.
right.
So is that 140,239 gallons?
Right.
Is that the actual flow, or is that
Those
what's
are
what we
actual
have on
flows.
paper?
No, those are the actual flows for the year divided by 365. Yep, I took the monthly reports, added them up, divided by 365.
And the number above is based on 12 hours,
Correct.
169.
Yep.
And when you said that you found 15 hours to be pretty sweet, that was just based on.
Based on experience, I was able to, manage 15 hours.
So I would, ask that maybe we ask Cindy to, give us a little more behind the advice. Is when we were pumping at 15 hours, was she seeing degradation? What brings her to that 12 hour? Why not 11?
Right.
Or why not 13?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Right.
12 and a half. I don't know.
I mean, we were pumping for 22 to 23 hours a day when it was was that before it was super dry?
And there were detrimental effects.
Right, but you're talking 7 more
Right.
hours a day
Right. There were detrimental effects.
at a minimum.
Right. I think her, her advice, I don't know if it was aquifer specific, it's general.
Good
General.
practice, best practices.
Yeah, best practice.
So
Yep.
when you say aquifer specific, you mean our aquifer?
Right.
Or just in general,
Right,
this
I
is
think
what you need to do?
She's talking about general best practice is
Yeah.
what she was discussing.
Yeah.
Yep. I think she would require a lot of data gathering on her part to try to find a Hinesburg one. I'm not sure if she would change her mind or not.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why we wouldn't want to go with best practices.
Well, I can tell you why.
Because we have a zero.
We wouldn't have any water for anybody to use.
We have water for people to use.
Well, not if this
Not,
stands.
not on
Right.
paper.
Well, you're talking about growth moving forward.
No, I'm talking about like if somebody,
Somebody wants
wants
to
to
put
build
an
a bedroom.
an in-law
apartment.
apartment. We can't, we have nothing to allocate.
Right,
So-
well, maybe that's the reality.
Well, in my opinion, there's plenty of water for an in-law apartment. And I would hate to tell somebody they can't
Right.
do that
I mean, right now.
because of this.
Right now.
And I'm surprised because just 3 months ago, we allocated a pile of water saying we still got a little bit left for an in-law apartment. And now we find out we don't. I
Right.
think that's unfair to people in the town that they can't just, or some business who needs a small piece to keep moving forward, to say no. Now, I wouldn't want to damage the well or the aquifer, for sure.
Right.
But, I'm not convinced, because now we've changed the rule based on what? I'd just like to know. based on, not on actual aquifer data, maybe.
The
I think we
rule
just
being
ask, I respect her opinion, and I'd just like to ask her and say, here's our situation.
Right.
What's your opinion? So you didn't have that specific discussion with her?
I didn't talk about the corner
The
we
impact.
were in the impact, no. We just talked about the pumping rates and,
So I suggest we don't make a decision and we ask that question.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Alex, you think that the Black Rock well will come online in a year's time?
No.
No.
Well, we don't know, that there's more testing to be done on the Black Rock well, so that's still very much a question mark.
Do you have a ballpark idea?
That's for Eric.
actually, yeah,
Yeah, Eric would know better than I would.
Okay.
actually got, I can pass these around.
And then with the addition of the new mapping software that the system now has,
Do it that way.
Eric, are you close to or have you completed like
They-
a full mapping?
No, that,
Or is that mapping as you go along and find
The-
leaks?
the program didn't match up very well as it was written with what our engineer built.
Okay,
So they're custom programming it right now. So it's still at Fulcrum, they're doing all their ones and zeros and
so it's,
making it.
so we don't,
Right, we don't have a
Practically
product
have
right
it yet.
now. Right.
so my follow-up question to that, now knowing that, is probably less answerable. What's your confidence level in knowing where or if the next leak will happen? And thinking about like this 620 leak, on Friday, knowing that got you back capacity, like, tell me something you can't tell me. How many more of those are out there, right? You know what I mean? And I was
yeah,
thinking,
the program wouldn't tell me that.
my thinking was that you're a year into using this or something,
Right.
and you have better knowledge about the system, but you don't.
I mean, it'll tell me that the old lines are most likely where it's going to happen,
Yeah.
which is not always the case. It can give you some ballpark, but because sometimes we'll, like, the huge one we had, a year and a half ago up in Richmond Road,
Yeah.
that was not an old line. It
So-
just wasn't built right.
So like I'm trying to wrap my head around sort of this variable number of like, that's almost impossible to tell, I suppose. It's like, how much water are we leaking?
Well, what I heard
I
from
think right
Eric
now
is
we're
we're not
pretty-
going to prevent them,
Right.
but you're going to identify them much sooner.
Yeah, I mean, with our system, I can see it happen. I can tell you, like, within minutes when it happened. So we can start looking for them.
Where I think in the past, we didn't really
Right.
have that data, and
Right.
we just went on and,
Yeah.
So a non-factor is what I'm hearing in terms of making that zero a positive number.
As far as knowing, right now, our system is, a system is never completely tight,
Sure.
ever. But right now, our system's pretty tight.
Right.
I mean, tight enough that, we notice a leak that is a hole that big around.
Yeah.
That's pretty tight.
Well, there's an answer. That's a good
Yeah.
answer.
Yep. So like this week we averaged 120,000 gallons a day, which is a lower average than I think 11
Previous.
years, like
Yeah,
11 years
previous.
ago.
yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Or this last year.
Yeah.
And how much growth has happened in the past decade,
Yeah.
and we're using less water than a decade ago.
So I think the question that Mary Lee asked is how quickly the well could go online, and based on
Yep.
what you've provided here, you're
Yeah.
saying the testing should be done by the end of this year.
Right.
And
According
then, right?
Yeah. According to Cindy, she thinks that we could have it approved
Yep.
by the state by the end of the year.
Okay, and then you say if it's done, then the entire project could be finished in a year, take another year to finish it, but that's assuming there's some bond vote at some
Right.
point. I'm
Right.
not sure
So if
where
you-
it says where would the bond vote
Basically,
be?
assuming the bond vote was on town meeting day, which is a big assumption.
That's a huge assumption, I
Right,
think.
because we've already got other big things going
Yeah.
forward. I just had to pick a date.
Yeah, so you're saying from a bond vote?
It's a year.
A year, okay.
Right, from a bond
That,
vote, it's a
that
year.
gives us some information.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
And then, all those, all the numbers each year will go up 3%. Or 2.3% or something, what the hell it is.
Does this
Construction
include
interest.
Cindy's work, the hydrogeology work and all of?
I believe it does. Yeah, the 750 includes all of her.
So that's the entire
Yep.
upgrade. The new
Yes.
train of
Right.
ultrafiltration and piping it there and controls and expanding the storage,
That was,
right?
Yep.
Which had to happen.
right.
So Eric, right now, our capacity to allocate is 0, correct?
If you guys
If we stick
approve
with
this the
this.
way it is, yes.
Right, but according to the figures you gave us.
Right.
And the only new water that we see in the foreseeable future is this Black Rock well, is that
Currently.
correct?
Yep.
So if we didn't raise the hours that you can pump per day, there really wouldn't be any possibility to permit any new building.
Kind of the reason I'm not as concerned as Cindy seems to be is the fact that we already have to, when you develop the well, you already have to keep out a certain amount of the flow from even counting to begin with.
Right.
So you know there's a tremendous amount of water there that you can't even count on paper.
Right.
So, I mean, really, we have to supply our community with water. I mean, there's people who live, what, a mile away from where the well is, who are in the service area, who could otherwise drill a well. We have some commitment to provide water if we, in my mind, we know there's water there. It's just a matter of how you want to mark
Yeah.
it down on paper.
And I wouldn't have approved the Black Rock with it as presented, although I wanted to, it seemed appropriate, thinking they would have got the last drop.
Right.
So I propose that we don't make a decision, and that we have a discussion with Cindy. Again, I respect her opinion, and I want to hear her out, but to share with her, here's our situation, and to get her feeling on it at least before we make a decision, because she's our expert.
How do you want
I
to do
mean,
that?
the
Joe?
other-
I would like to talk to her. I think.
Yeah, the other way to get some numbers back is prior to July of 2016, we only had wastewater allocation. And last year, you guys had me add, grandfather numbers to the water side, which is shown on here.
That's that 24, 34, 2.
Well, it's part of it. It's
Yeah,
part of
there's
it.
a portion. of it.
Some of it is not grandfathered, some of it is grandfathered.
So some of it is Black Rock
Right.
that we just approved.
And some of
Yeah.
it's grandfather projects that didn't have a number because we didn't do water allocation. So that's a decision that the board could make to gain gallons back by just saying, get rid of the grandfather numbers. I mean,
Well, I mean, they're promised, so we can't, I think, overpromise because they, at some point, may want to connect. But I think you're right in that,
lot of this-
when they come back around, I don't know if it's every 3 years.
every 3 years.
Yeah, and they come back around, we'll have to take a close look at it because it's valuable water. So I think that's what I would propose to
Second
and
that.
yeah,
So you want to have this on the agenda for next week as
yes,
well? Yeah.
yeah.
Just explain to me, Eric, so we have the water capacity in gallons per day is 169.
Yes.
If you add the actual usage of 140 plus,
You get the 28,961 remaining.
right, so how would the 34, 227 and the 7161 be subtracted? Because that's more than the 28.
Right, that's what
Then
you
you
have
end
in
up with
brackets.
12,000
That's a negative
in
12,000.
negative. That's what that is. It's in brackets. It could be in red. That would be good.
Yep.
So.
All right, now, yeah, okay, those numbers add
That's
up.
a number you gotta
Yep.
make up.
Good question.
Yep.
Was Cindy aware that the last time we did this, we were looking at 15-hour pump?
That's what I told her. You know, I told her about the whole situation. She said she recommended against it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we'll ask her. We're not gonna force her to make any decision. She's gonna give her a professional decision,
Yep.
you know, on her recommendation to us. And the state hasn't changed their rules around this.
They
And even 15 hours their rule, or
No,
they don't
that
care?
that was
Do they have
the
a
most I
recommend-
felt comfortable with.
Do they have a recommendation? What happens if we said 24?
I don't think they care.
Okay.
Yeah, which is weird, but they. Yep.
All right.
Last I
Phil,
heard.
that from the allocation committee's work, when we called around other towns and then talked to the state water supply person I talked to just thought we were doing a great job keeping track, because there are towns that don't even know how much they're using, have no idea how much capacity they have left, and it's all just sort of, you know, very roughshod accounting of water usage. So I think that's the frame of reference for, you know, why the state maybe doesn't have stringent protocols.
Are they best practices in other towns in our situation, saying 12?
I'd have to check that.
All right, that would be good to know.
Yep.
Cindy would probably know that.
Right.
She's probably dealing with other towns in the same situation. And then this, I think, is a good start in this, you know, sort of sketch of where we are on water. I would hope we start to fill it in with more detail, like
Right.
here are the, you know, here's the train, you know, here are the 10 main steps associated with bringing the water on. The first one is number one, you know, it's fully permitted, so I don't know if that gets broken down into smaller pieces, but it'd be nice if there were 4 steps to it and we could, over time, say number one's good, number
Yeah.
two's good, so we know where we are. And then as far as the other piece, there's 3 or 4 main pieces to it. It'd be nice to know what they are. And then, you know, get a little detail. It sounds like Wayne he must have that in a spreadsheet for him to
Right.
come up with that number. It would be good to have that spreadsheet.
Yep.
So to that point, this is your document, Eric?
It is.
Yeah. So the two numbers, I'm adding them together, correct?
If we were to do this,
if we were to do
if
them.
you were to do part 2.
which is a capital
number
improvement. that
2
we-
isn't inclusive of number 1.
No.
okay,
It's,
that's
it's
what I read that.
recommended when we do the expansion, but they are separate.
So
We
we're-
had- we had
we're looking at
said-
a $2 million
Right.
or so, okay.
Right.
And then to Phil's point about the details, did we have to kind of loop back a little bit? Like, didn't we have a pump down test? Or
Well,
was it
that's-
supposed to
that's-
happen in June or
Right, that's-
something?
In that first part, that's
Yeah,
the pump down, and then the application and the public comment period. All that stuff is in that between now and December.
Okay, yeah. So it'd be good to have those steps so we
Yeah.
know and we can be checking off. And we're gonna have to be involved in that.
Yep.
And, you know, it'd be good to know that because we know we're looking at a bond, so we can start to plan,
Yep.
you know, what that looks like.
it's super helpful because you're in it every day and we come
Right.
into it
Right.
in and out. And so
Yep.
it's really great to have
Yep.
ourselves
Have the
reminded
steps.
about where we are
Okay.
in it. That would be super helpful, thank you.
Well, we really need that drawdown test just to know whether this is even gonna be a viable well.
Well, exactly.
Actually, we had a meeting on site this morning. Myself and Renee, Rob Frost, Ben Avery, and Cindy at the wellhead. And actually,
Drop a marble?
No, when we were talking, a part of it was because I had some concerns because they didn't go the full depth.
Yeah,
And Rob explained the whys, and Cindy weighed in on it. So our next step is actually, BlackRock is gonna fund a camera inspection and logging of the well. So we can see where the fractures are, if there's any stabilities, and, get a good idea of what's what. And that will give us are we going to go deeper or
Okay.
not?
So potentially you could go deeper and increase
Maybe.
the flow.
Or,
There's a very
Or
good chance that
hurt the
the
flow.
flow is there. It just hasn't really been accounted for because the size of the pipe was 3-inch versus 4-inch. The pump was smaller. So there's a very good chance the water actually is there,
Just hasn't been fully tested
fully
yet.
developed.
More
Right.
capacity.
Right. So
Okay.
we're going to see, is there just one fracture? Is there 3 or 4 fractures? The log will make a big difference.
and is there potential to put a pump a little bit slightly larger if they do the pipe?
Larger pump
just
and lower.
right below the fracture,
Yeah.
the existing one.
So,
Okay.
and if that, pending that, then we'll go ahead and get, going, as fast as we can on getting that 5-day test done and the permitting done. Yep.
All right.
A lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's it. Anything
all
else for us?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Sarah.
Number 9. So this is, Alex is going to join us. Significant project here.
You're ahead of time too. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah. Significant project brought on by the Planning Commission and our zoning group. And that's the official map, which we saw some of it a little while ago, I think, some inklings of it. And some potential zoning changes. First of all, I want to thank the Planning Commission and you, Alex, and your team, because this is a long process. There's a lot to it. You've already had some public meetings about it, and so now we're taking really into the next step of the process. And maybe if you can tell us what we got, and then you gave us a great memo that reviewed the process. If we want to move forward, what it is, but it's always good to talk about it again.
That was really appreciated, that part of the memo.
Sure.
Because
So
we always ask that, like, what's next, Alex?
Yeah. Yes. So in a nutshell, we adopted an official map in 2009. It was our first official map. And the purpose of an official map is to lay out locations for future community facilities, whether those are future sidewalks, future roads, future parks, future trails, with the intent to do better planning so that as landowners and developers come to town and want to do projects, they understand where sort of the basic framework of our infrastructure is going to be, and they can plan for it, around it, that sort of thing. So in any case, we adopted our first official map in 2009. At the same time, we expanded our village zoning substantially, and we haven't revised it since. So it's overdue. There have been several projects. The Bissonnet Rec Fields is one of the big ones that happened in a place that our official map didn't think it was going to happen. So we need to account for that. And so there are properties that are shown as having future community facilities on the current map that are not going to have them, and we need to get those off of there and unencumber those properties. And then there are other places where we would like to do facilities that we have talked about in new locations, and so those need to go onto the map. The Planning Commission also felt that the Hannaford project, which ran into an official map issue, was indicative of a need to revise the map to be more specific about what exactly the facility is that the community is looking for, how much area it would take up, and just provide a greater level of specificity so that there would be less likely to be misunderstandings going forward as developers try to understand our regulations and the like. So hence the update. The map itself has turned into 2 maps. We wanted to recognize the town's desire to see a Richmond Road major path or sidewalk. And so there's a second sheet that deals with that corridor. And again, they wanted to have a lot more specificity, and the only way to do that is with words or pictures. And so the map is now accompanied by a 5-page
Descriptive.
narrative that describes each of the facilities on it, numbers them, and gives you more details. So without going into the details of each of the facilities shown on the map, that's the nutshell of what the official map change is. That is just one of 2 proposals that the Planning Commission has forwarded you. So they're asking for you to review and take action on these revisions to the official map, essentially official map version 2. They're also asking you to make a change to a section of the zoning regulations that deals with village design standards. So currently we have design standards in the zoning for the village area that talk about parking behind buildings, appropriate sidewalks and streetscape connections, landscaping requirements. There's a variety of design standards that we have in the village. What we've lacked are standards related to public areas, green space. And so this proposal would add a section to the regs that would define that, so that developers and landowners who are looking to do projects would better understand what we're looking for, what we mean by green space. Yes,
of what a green space is.
What it is, how it should function, what amenities should be included when it is created, and how much of it do you have to provide, and how much of it do you have to build at minimum. And the Planning Commission felt like these 2 different regulation revisions, one official map revision, one zoning revision, work together in that regard. The official map sort of calls out the bigger areas that the community is looking to set aside for future public improvements. The zoning regulations is really at the level of a particular project. So you're on 10 acres and you want to do this, here's what you have to plan for. And the design standards anticipate that there can be overlap. So that, it may be that the public space that a developer would then be required to build as a function of these new standards could be coincident with an official map element. Doesn't have to be, but it could be. So the ability to be flexible, the ability to sort of have that synergy, that's boiled into these design standards.
Yeah, there was also a part in there that said you're doing a development and maybe you can't quite incorporate green space where you are, but if you can enhance one that's existing or whatnot, that would be considered too, so.
Right, yeah, we tried to lay out a variety of options in these design standards because you should be clear on this. This does break new ground in our regulatory protocol. Instead of just saying, please make it look like this, we are saying make it look like this and build at least this much of it. So we're telling them you have to actually create and make happen a certain amount of this public open space. So because of that, we felt it was important to go out for peer review. We had other planners in the mostly in the Chittenden County area take a look at these and make suggestions. And then we also had David Rue at Stitzel, Page and Fletcher do a legal review to make sure that we weren't trampling on constitutional takings issues or what have you. And he made a whole lot of suggestions, and many of the sort of opt-outs or alternatives, came at his request to make sure that there was sort of a robust set of options and to avoid a potential takings claim. So that's it in a nutshell. There are 2 proposals, the official map revision and the zoning regulation revision.
Would we do these in parallel?
I would suggest doing them at the same time.
When we have a public
Yes.
meeting, for example, we would be addressing both.
I would suggest you do that. You don't have
Yeah.
to. They are separate standalone proposals. One could go forward without the other. But I think it makes sense to do them together. The Planning Commission certainly worked on them together, and their public hearing was about both of them. With that said, most of the feedback, if you remember back to January and before at the end of last year, was on the official map. That was sort of the lightning rod.
Yeah. And understandable, I think.
Yeah. And a lot of that revolved around one community facility that's been the bugaboo for going on a decade now, the Hannaford project in Commerce Park, which on the official map is Community Facility 34. So I don't want to go into the details tonight of the specific facilities, but I do want to tell you that this is an iterative process. You're at the end of the process, but you have an opportunity to discuss this, to make revisions to what the Planning Commission proposed before you hold a public hearing and get feedback, and then take some sort of action. But you should know that the planning commission has made revisions each step along the way. So they spent a good long time coming up with a draft. We went out for informal feedback in the fall, and I think it was October through December. We entertained feedback. Landowners came in. We sent letters out to landowners and to the community at large. And they made revisions based on that feedback. And then they held their public hearing formally in March. And there was a lot more feedback. So they made more revisions. And one of those revisions was a compromise position on the community facility 34 on the map, which is that Commerce Park parcel. Previously, the commission had shown the entire parcel as a future community facility consistent with the current official map. And after that formal public hearing, they wanted to compromise. And so only a portion of that property is now identified as a community facility, largely the wetland area and a small corner over by the post office that has potential that's out of the wetland area for some community use.
Speak to how that would, if this goes through, change the Hannaford conversation.
It wouldn't.
Okay.
'Cause they're under the old.
Yeah, Hannaford is unaffected by this. That whole development project will play out in the courts under our old official map and our older regulations. However,
Which is the answer I expected you to say.
Yeah.
But then why are we,
so we don't know the outcome of that.
Right.
It's
And so
very
therefore-
possible that Hannaford will not prevail or will choose to walk away from the
Tomorrow they could
project
say
at some
no,
point.
yeah, okay,
And
got it,
if
yeah.
that were the case and another project were to be proposed, this new official map, assuming you adopt it, would be in force.
just the answer I expect you to say. So in the same sort of spirit of how we got to that conversation, talk about briefly number 36, which is up off of Mechanicsville Road,
Yes.
that space. So presumably there's a single landowner up
Yes.
there. Does that single landowner at this time tonight know that number 36 has been designated?
Yes, we've
Okay.
been in communication with the Quinn Estate, Patty in particular.
Because that's a big yellow spot.
It is a
Or
big yellow
orange
spot, and
yeah.
we had yes. So and that communication has been recent. In fact, the Planning Commission, as a result of getting some feedback from her, did a site visit to that site last month. I don't know. We were in tick season. I had them crawling all over me. That's all I remember. But they did a site visit. She had some very helpful comments about where the wet spots on that property were, and
That's
she's
great.
aware
That's
of it.
exactly what I wanted to hear.
I'll tell you for the
Yeah.
record, I asked her straight out, this could be seen as an encumbrance on your property. You're trying to sell this property. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she said, if you're trying to tell me that the town's going to get in the way of a sale because they want to put a park here, then I'm not in favor of this. But if what you're telling me is the town is planning for a future facility and would like to work with whoever the buyer is or the developer on a community facility, I have no problem with that. And that is what this is about. It's not
That's
we
how I
want
hear
that
it.
land today. It's about
Yeah, no, that's how I hear it too.
if that property were to be developed to its fullest potential.
But as you know, we got
we
into this
think-
problem because we didn't have that
Yeah,
communication that you're
exactly.
talking about.
So yes, we made a point to reach out to the Quinn Estate in particular, because it's for sale, because they're not living here. So I don't expect them to be seeing front porch forum posts or
Right,
anything
right,
else.
right. Much appreciated.
Okay. And do you want to just talk about the process, just the
Yeah,
steps?
so procedurally, again, these kinds of regulation revisions are iterative. You're at the end of the process, and so at your stage, you're empowered to discuss it, to maybe make some revisions if you want, and then you need to hold a public hearing before you can take any action. Now, I suppose if the five of you felt this is a ridiculous proposition entirely, we're not even going to entertain a public hearing. You could just send it back to the planning commission. But assuming you're not in that state or won't get into that state, then you should discuss any revisions, have me make them, and then publicize the final version for
Right.
a public hearing, and then decide what to do after you've heard from the public one more time.
And it's just one public hearing?
You're only required to have one, yes.
And
You could
then-
have more,
right.
but you need to have at least
Sometimes we do.
one.
And then we would vote, assuming we'd vote to move it forward or not?
You could, it's,
Or we could put it to the
you could
town
put it to
vote.
the voters, yeah.
What's your recommendation on that, as far as the scale of this and whatnot?
Yeah. Generally speaking, I would encourage you to take action. You are the legislative body, and you ought to be responsible in that way and not kick it to the voters. Particularly because there's a petition option, and that's happened in
Right.
Heinsberg
Yes.
before, when a zoning
On zoning,
regulation
yes.
unsettled a large number of people, and they submit a petition, and then there was a townwide vote. So there is recourse if people think that you're not acting in the best interest of the community.
5% of the.
Yeah, it's not a high
5%,
bar
yeah.
for a
5%.
petition. So my recommendation would be that you hold that responsibility and you act on it and allow the voters to petition if they feel like you were in error.
Right.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have to make that decision now. I mean, I think,
You
for me,
wouldn't
it would
know.
be, how did the public hearing go, you know, and weigh it from there, I think.
I will tell you that you know, a townwide vote on a regulation is a lot different from a townwide vote on a budget. Even though a budget is comprised of many, you know, probably way more moving parts, it's still a number, and you're voting yes or no on a number. There's no number here to vote on. This is a page of regulations and a map that has 36
Detail,
different.
yeah.
There's a lot of detail for a voter to try to understand, and that's what you're here for. They've elected you to do the harder thinking and to figure that out.
That's why we
Good
have you to
luck
help
with
us.
Yeah,
Same thought.
yeah.
All right, so as far as tonight goes, I mean, there's no action to take, other than, I think, we decide, yes, let's move this process forward. I mean, I guess we could say not at all, but,
Which may put us into, as I think about this, probably after Labor Day, before we have a public hearing on this.
Oh,
If
for
we,
sure.
if we
Yeah.
decide to do
Oh,
this.
for sure. You definitely
Yeah.
don't want to have a public
No.
hearing anytime until the fall because
Correct, yeah.
people are not
Right.
thinking about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Summer's a terrible time to have
Yeah.
public hearings.
But a great time to introduce it to us.
I think I would ask Renee to sort of, you know, based on the recommendations and how much time this will take, to sort of say, all right, you know, September, maybe we'll have this, and
Yeah.
maybe the public meeting could potentially be November, or whatever it
Yeah.
might be.
Renee is the best person to schedule
yeah.
this whole thing. I'm happy to assist with what's required procedurally, but you know
I
what
got
this
it.
board's
Yeah.
agenda looks like, and
Yeah,
I will tell you that there is a hard stop in
Right,
March of next
next
year. If
year.
you haven't acted on it, it's considered disapproved.
right.
And beyond that, there isn't actually a pressing sort of reason or date that you have to meet. The only thing to keep in mind is that once you warn a public hearing on this, it actually goes into effect. And that's a kind of an odd state statute, but it's designed to allow communities to enact regulations and not have projects sort of slide in while the community's in the process of doing adoption. So you should be cognizant of that and wait to warn the public hearing until you have confidence in what you want to propose.
Right.
And B, know that if you're trying to have some of these larger projects be subject to these new regulations, which they might be, that's your way to make that happen. The attorneys have told us that for larger projects, subdivisions in particular, they vest in the regulations at the time they apply for what's called a preliminary plat application.
Yep.
That's the first level of a subdivision application that's mostly complete and substantive. So the
Yeah.
sketch plan level is not considered robust enough to vest in
Yeah.
the regs. So several of our projects are in between these larger
Which
projects.
ones? Which
So Hinesburg Center, Brett
Yeah.
Grabowski's project, is getting a new sketch plan approval next week, I think. So they're at the sketch phase and ready to go to preliminary. BlackRock is waiting to go to preliminary
Yeah.
as soon as they have their allocation figured out. And Jan Blumstrom's sort of larger master plan is waiting to go to preliminary. So all three of the big projects
Would be in
could be
line.
subject to these new regs
Yes.
if you warn a hearing before they make an application.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to play a cat and mouse game with
No,
any of
no,
them.
no.
But you should just know that that's
Yeah.
the case.
And all three projects are kind of aware that this conversation is going on.
Yes,
and,
yes. We
and
made
probably
sure
commenting
to,
during
make sure
the.
to contact each of those developers to say, here's the proposed map. Do you have any issues?
They've had some input.
You'll notice that some of the community facilities have actually been designed in concert with their
Right.
proposal. So
That's
it's,
why I
it's
assume
been a
that.
bit of a back and forth with them.
They commented during the planning commission hearing process, or yeah, okay.
So this is your opportunity, if you guys haven't looked through them with detail, take the time to really look through them. If you have questions, if you have suggestions
Yeah.
for further changes.
Well, I think what would be appropriate, I think, is to schedule a time and have you there, Alex, for us to, sort of review it and do our homework ahead of time
Yeah.
and say, hey, I don't understand this or I don't understand that. And it would be good for you to clue us in on the couple of sticky areas that, that might be a concern after we, at some point, just so
That'd be
we're.
great, and I think that there will be planning commissioners who would like to come to that
Okay.
meeting and be part
Explain
of the
their-
explanation
yes.
of their thinking.
That would be
So
good.
Whenever Renee
Yeah.
deems that
Right.
appropriate, we can work that out.
I think that would be at least an hour, maybe
Yeah,
a
I mean,
little
that's
bit
what
more.
you've done in the
Yeah.
past when there's been
Yeah.
regulations that have been submitted to you from the planning commission. You've kind of gone through it.
Yeah.
And asked questions sort of section by section.
Yeah.
So,
And then the idea there is, at each step, we can decide, do we continue to move forward? But out of that, maybe some tweaks or changes, maybe. And then, then we come back and say, okay, here's where we're at. Do we want to move forward or not?
So why did you say the public hearing might be in November? Why that late? Why not?
I just threw that out. It's going to take a while before we agree that this is what we want to present.
Okay, but we could aim for having it earlier.
Oh, yeah.
depends
Yeah.
on.
I'm happy to work with Renee on a schedule
Yeah,
that
it
makes
could be.
sense.
Sure.
And the good news is, unlike some of the regulation revisions you've seen in the past, this is not, 75 pages where changes are being made to 32 different sections of the regs. This is one discrete new section in the zoning and a bunch of changes to the official map. So there's definitely some stuff to talk about, but I think this is a bite-size
And
change.
we've already have an official map that has some controversy, but because as a town, it was the first shot at it, we may not have done the best job we possibly can.
We didn't.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't say that. We learned that
Yeah.
we could have done better, and
So
we should
here's
do
a
better.
shot,
in our
and
number two.
I'm confident that however it comes out, it had been well thought out, well communicated, and we would be able to, the object would be, when we're done, we'll be able to stand on it to feel like the process was solid, the thought process was good, and so,
Okay, sounds good.
yeah.
As an aside to a different subject, but about zoning regs, housekeeping stuff, do we still have a long list, or did we knock down a lot of
We
that?
were a pretty short list.
That's
That
what I
last
thought.
housekeeping change
We
that
took
was
care of a lot.
done last year
A year,
was
a year and a half ago, or something like that.
huge.
Yeah.
That was a big laundry list of changes.
I just remember telling my time on the planning commission and thinking about this list, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and thinking that we got through a lot of it last year, but
We did, yeah. It's
But-
a much shorter list now. And frankly, the next change that you're likely to see on that front is probably gonna be the wastewater allocation scoring system that you indicated you
about,
want to
yeah.
move on.
yep.
So, and another aside, I guess, Alex, is, as you know, we're looking at our wastewater treatment, new permit, which is gonna require some, new wastewater treatment design and a new wastewater treatment plan.
Right?
And then we've got water expansion. Both of those could be bond votes. Maybe an ambulance on the side too. So
Yep.
there's quite a bit of, on our plate in the next 3 years, let's say. I think one of the things we'll want to really be looking at is the allocation fee structure, and make sure we're solid around that. not to beat up on developers, but to make sure everything's equitable for everybody in the town, and so I imagine we'll be looking at that, and you'll have some input on that.
Definitely, and I don't want to get into the meat of it because we're probably gone overtime now, but that's why this memo has a whole section on fiscal considerations.
Yes,
which
you did, yeah,
you don't
yes.
normally see from me
Right,
when it comes
right.
to these regulation changes. I'm just like merely, oh, we're going to do planning, and somebody else will figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, this time we can't do that,
Yeah.
and so I think we need. I think you should talk about whether we need to bring in some outside
Yeah.
expertise to
Yeah.
answer the questions that you just posed.
And those same ones go on there, because there's
Yeah.
could be allocation associated with that too.
Yeah,
Allocation
yeah.
fees.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and I know we don't have it in the budget, but
Right.
I would love to see you find the way or to make it happen in this fiscal year to bring somebody online.
I think it may be worthwhile, just so we're, prepared for this.
If it helps, we're going to be substantially over our expected revenue in this fiscal year in planning and zoning. Just one application came in with a $20,000 fee.
Is this the Mechanicsville?
No,
Well, no.
this is Jan Blumstrom's
Okay.
property and their site plan application for
Yeah.
what you provided allocation for.
Yes.
So that'll
Yes.
be on the DRB docket probably early fall, and because we revised our fee schedule several years ago, the fees for simple site plan reviews are tied to the size of the structures
Mm-hmm.
new structures being proposed, and they're proposing
Some good size,
tens of thousands of square feet
Yeah.
of new structures. So.
And this was, we reallocated some water, I think, to allow that, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes. So they
Which
have
is good,
they have an
yeah.
approved lot, an
Yeah.
allocation, and a green light to actually
Yeah.
go forward once
And
they
I
have
think
the site
this was
plan approval.
grandfathered. This is allocation that had been sitting out there for a while, if I remember
Only,
right.
They
only a
had it
very
on a
small
different-
piece
Oh,
of
okay.
it. The bulk of
Okay.
it was new,
Okay.
newly allocated
Yeah.
last year. But anyways, my point was only going to be that if we are likely to be substantially over on the revenue side in planning and zoning this fiscal year, maybe that would make you feel better
Yeah.
about spending
Well,
a little something out of
your
budget.
point.
To your point, this is exactly what we've been trying to do for years, is to find ways to have all of us pay in some way that's equitable, like you say, to not only improve as we're required to, but improve and build out infrastructure for water and wastewater, and not have the town or the water users, the users, like take it all on their backs. And this is a great example of how that is actually starting to play out.
And I think that, because we know we have all this coming down the pike, it would behoove us to plan a little bit and understand, rather than
Yeah.
be pushed around, to be able to control it a little bit more.
Yep.
And we're gonna need to be really honest when these bond votes come up, not just on the bond vote, but I think we're gonna have to explain the big picture. We can't come out with a bond vote and then, hey, great, hey, got another one for you. So I think everybody needs to see the big picture, I think, for those
Yeah.
that are big picture thinkers. All right. Very good. Thank you, Alex.
Yep.
Appreciate it. And again, thank the planning commission and for their work on this. This is a lot of work, there's no doubt about it.
Will do.
And next item is item 11, Town Administrator Report. Hold on, Al, you're here, is there anything, you're just, okay.
I'm good.
All right, Town Administrator Report.
All
I
right.
think you gave us a copy of it, but I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
say it for our viewers.
yeah, the July 4th
Seemed to
events.
go good.
Yeah.
And who got the weather? You, the one
I-
that ordered that?
Yeah, except it was a little hotter than we'd gotten adjusted to yet at that point. Usually, typically by July 4th, we've had a lot of heat, and this year we hadn't had it. And so I think that may have kept some people away just because it was so hot. But for those that were there, I think everyone had a good time. It was a nice event, and we had the parade and all of the various events that were going around in town.
Fire trucks look good as always, and I didn't see, I saw one big one from Charlotte, and I'm sure you guys were eyeing that. It's stands up about 8 feet high. Yeah, high water one, it seems.
And had the swearing-in ceremony at the police station for Chief Cambridge.
Yeah, which was very nice.
That was
It's
nice.
Appropriate.
Well attended. We, as I mentioned earlier, we had the inspection of the slate roof and the actual repair done this week. And so that is good. We'll just stay on top of that and have that inspected every once in a while. And we also have numbers to work for in our capital budget, so we can start saving for an eventual replacement. Next week, I will be on vacation as well as Joy, so you guys will be on your own
Right.
for the July
I was gonna
18th meeting.
Bring that up. So you'll probably have an agenda
Yes,
that will
I'll
be
have
there,
it.
and
Yep.
then whatever, we normally make it official, like on Monday or Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I can have it done for you tomorrow if you
Yeah,
need to.
and then from that point on, I'll take the lead on
Yeah.
it if something else pops up.
Yeah, so I'll send
And
you a
then
Word version.
You get, yeah.
I'll
that
send you a
sounds
Word
good.
version tomorrow of the
Yep.
agenda, and you can
Well,
adjust
I
it.
can post it tomorrow too. If
Well,
everyone-
yeah, I mean,
As a
I'll be here
draft,
tomorrow.
yeah.
But I can,
so,
what I'm
yeah.
saying is I can get it up tomorrow.
I think they want to keep it so that in case they make any
Yeah,
changes.
yeah.
Oh, fine.
So we'll
Okay.
have a draft
Yeah.
we'll be looking at, and then,
So you'll be doing up the Dropbox bill then, is that what you're
yeah,
saying?
I could do that too.
I can, yeah.
I'm not sure if I have permission to do the Dropbox.
I
but-
can
Yeah.
put stuff in there
Okay.
if there's anything.
All right.
And we talked a little bit about the meeting that we had at the well site today, so I think that was productive. It was good to have them all there and sort of really get an understanding of why they stopped when they did, and but also look at a possibility of looking at it further and having a camera go down in there and really explore it, so.
So that,
I think
that
that
yeah,
was
that sounds
time
good.
well
I
spent.
mean, we don't want to go and develop it and say, geez, we should have drilled another 40 feet.
Right,
so-
but we also don't want to try to drill further and find that it collapses
Yes.
and then we're
Yeah.
out,
So good. And so Cindy Sprague was there.
She
So
was
she's-
there, yeah,
She's our
and Rob
engineer.
Frost was there,
Yeah.
yeah, so it was
Okay,
good.
good.
Jen became aware that the tennis courts, apparently a lot of drainage from one of the storm events.
Yeah.
Everything at HCS came down onto the courts.
Like
And so-
gravel and stuff.
gravel and all of the stuffs and mulch and everything. So I contacted Jean Jensen and had her meet me out there today. So she's gonna have the district look at the, drainage and see if they can fix
Great,
that.
yeah.
And so we might, get some other assistance to get it cleaned up.
Yeah, so you can
So-
blast it off.
Pressure wash.
Yeah.
So it's a green light for the cleanup now,
Yeah.
but.
Okay.
So-
That's not the only place in town that's had those issues.
Right,
Yeah,
no,
there's
no,
some
no.
big storm issues.
Yeah, but it was a good conversation, I
Yeah.
think, so
Okay.
anyhow, that was it.
All right, any questions for Renee or Joy? No? Select Board Forum?
I have a couple things. So I wanted to let everybody know we had a great year with balloons. Marilee was there, among others. And Roger Cohn once again took the lead on getting this done. I think since 1976 or something like that, he's been doing this. And I've been helping him for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, which seems like I'm still new there, honestly, compared to what he's doing. But he posted on Front Porch Forum that at $3 a pop, we sold $1,652 worth of balloons.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah, isn't that incredible? So there was a little over $700 in costs this year because he bought extra balloons and strings, which goes over into next year because we didn't use it all. So just in all of us showing up and selling balloons and asking people, actually you don't even ask, you just walk around with them. Almost $900 towards next year's fireworks. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. And that includes, I don't know if it happened to you as well, but like people will just come up to you and just give me money and say, just take it. They don't want a balloon. They'll just give you
A lot of
money.
people get $4 rather
Yeah.
than 3, which
Yeah.
was such a great
Lots of money,
feeling.
or to keep the change kind of things.
Yeah.
So bravo for Roger and all the volunteers. I know he would deflect from any
Yeah.
praise, but nevertheless, he gives a lot to that every year.
He does.
And I've got to say, it's good to use that hot air that's coming from that large, large
there it
legal
goes.
firm.
There it goes. So there's that. And then I wanted to ask, so that's the, I mean, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that balloon
It was
experience.
really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun, yeah. And then I wanted to ask, I saw an email that went out from someone that there were trees planted or Bissonnette Field on 4th of July. Did that happen?
Not on the 4th of July.
Or when did it happen?
It was
Day before or something like that?
No, 2
Oh.
days later.
2 days
It was
later?
a Saturday.
And wanted to ask if that, I haven't been a chance to go out there yet.
Yeah.
Did it happen, do you know?
It did.
Yeah.
I'm so busy this time of year.
Yeah.
I asked Andrea Morganti and Paul Wizerack to kind of
Yeah.
take the lead.
Oh, good,
They
yeah.
got
6 more, I
planted
think.
5 new ones and
Five.
had to replace one that died last year and some shrubs. So, and Al has been kind enough to water them a couple
Ah,
times.
thank you.
That's where I was
Yeah.
going with that, so
Yeah.
thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al. Yep, very
Yeah.
accommodating there. Even last year it was really, really dry,
Yeah.
and we kept all of them alive except for that one. So that's really good.
So they're in the ground, yep.
So that was the last. I'll pick up if you're
Yep,
done.
I'm done.
So that's the last items we had to check the box on to have a certificate of occupancy. So everything required up there has now been done.
So are they
Great.
playing baseball next spring?
It looks pretty good.
Oh, good.
It looks good. It got a really slow start, but I've been keeping after it.
Yeah.
Tom has been up there mowing it. Millie's Field is probably the best, in my opinion, of course,
Yeah.
the best recreation field in the Burlington area.
Awesome.
It's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the other ones will be just as good. They just need to mature some. So it drains
heavily
well.
used.
It's
Like they're used a lot.
yeah,
too.
they'll be used a lot more once the whole facility's open. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, I hope the
Right.
Recreation Commission is proud of what they've done because it is one heck of a facility. And going forward, it's going to be even better.
Good.
Good.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But soon we'll be looking for volunteers to build
The shed.
the shed probably down the road a little.
Yeah.
But the dugouts.
Okay.
But we did purchase a storage container to keep everything safe and under cover. So I think it was a good deal for the time being. So
Beautiful.
yeah, that's great.
Sure, it's like somebody will sponsor a dugout or something, and we'll do something
Probably
like that.
can
yeah.
get that done.
Yeah. The Cedar Knolls dugout or something. Cedar Knolls right field pavilion or something. I don't know.
I haven't thought of that, but
Who knows? Who knows?
that sounds good.
That's good. Marilee, are you all set? So
I am, yeah.
The only other thing is we did have our community dinner, which seems like a long time ago, but it was, and that was pretty well attended, and a good opportunity to offer a free dinner to people who,
Anybody wanted it?
yeah, anybody who wanted it. Excellent food and some excellent desserts.
Yes,
say.
absolutely.
What'd you
Yeah.
make, Phil?
I didn't make it. I didn't make the
I thought you were
desserts.
tooting your own horn
No,
there.
not at all.
Joe,
Joe.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
Joe is an
They
awesome
were
dessert
fantastic.
maker.
But all the food was
I
good.
know that actually
and,
about Joe.
and it was a
Yeah.
good event. All right. So we'll move on. We have minutes to approve from our last meeting on the 18th. Which is almost 4 weeks ago. And then these are the town minutes, which I think we've seen them or not?
You've seen
Yeah?
them,
And are we looking to
but you wanted
officially
to,
approve them?
yeah,
Yes.
you wanted to look at them
Move it
again.
out, yeah. Okay, so the first would be from June 18th. And I was not here, but I did attend by phone. And who else?
I was here. And,
That was it,
yeah,
right,
it was
okay.
just Marilee
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I, and
And me.
you on the
Yeah.
phone. Yeah. We
Just-
had
just
coffee and we
barely
took
made
care
it.
of business. Yeah.
Barely made a quorum.
So we'll need a motion
I can make that motion
to approve the minutes
as
with,
amended if needed.
if needed.
Second it.
Okay. I looked them over, I didn't see anything. I think what was missing was how we had voted that Tom would be providing snacks all summer. So
That's right.
that's not in there.
And dinner before each meeting?
That's not in there, but, so we'll get that next time maybe.
By then, summer will be over.
It is wing night at Cedar Knoll on Thursdays. You guys can come over beforehand.
We could have our meeting there.
Yeah,
Actually, I should actually.
that sounds
I'm
pretty
always
good.
hungry before I get to these
So I had
things.
tonight, they're good.
So does anybody have any changes? No, they look good. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And I can say aye, I was there.
I'll abstain, I was
And
not.
Tom will abstain, so that's 3 ayes. The next is the annual meeting, which is pretty well done. So we'll need a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the annual minutes from March 5th with any changes as noted.
Second. And were you on the phone or were you in?
Trapped in Costa
Right,
That's what
that's
it was.
right, yeah.
Trapped.
Tough duty.
Boy,
Yeah.
that was rough.
Sorry for you.
Oh, you should have. So looking forward to making it back. Could have stayed
So-
another 2 months.
And Val, you don't do these, right?
No.
Missy
No,
does them.
Missy.
So these were done by Missy. I had one very minor change.
That Val would have caught
Yes.
if she had done them.
And that is the second to last sentence of Article 2. And it just says, he also gave a brief summary of, and I don't know if it says of the changes of note or just of changes of note. I don't know. Take
What?
the out, take the
You-
the.
No, I think it's clear with the 2 ofs. A brief summary of the changes of note.
Okay, so that sounds good to you?
Yes, it
Then
is.
we'll leave it in.
Boy, she talked you out of that one quick.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Changes of note is an interesting,
It's an expression
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
note.
yeah.
I would go with you on that one.
All right. And then the other thing was just on Article 5, my description of the community police department at first seemed, well, that's not exactly what I said, but I think it's captured correctly about, their budget, that it had overall gone, it's not 3%, but, some of the officers were paid a little more, and that's from previous years too. So I think it's fine. Any other comments? And you're good, Marilee? Tom? You're not gonna, yeah,
I'll abstain.
so, all right. So with that,
So had we
no
not,
changes.
Have we not approved these prior, I guess?
No, because you looked at them,
Yeah.
but there were, I think they were incomplete at the time. She was gonna
yeah.
add more to it.
That's
So
just
you
I
wanted to
thought
look
we
at it
looked at
later.
them once
Yeah.
before, but
So
okay.
she sent them more recently.
Take your word for it.
so they look okay, I guess, as is. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we've approved that.
So, do we want to
Oh.
discuss that?
Oh, yeah, so that's right. And so sort of just falling back to, I guess, select board forum or something, I did want to just note that there's been a lot of activity associated with the ambulance committee. At our last meeting, we started to move it forward, and since then, there's been 3 meetings. So there's been an awful lot of work done, which I just want to acknowledge. And also, point out that, and I mentioned this to Aaron, I think I mentioned it to Dawn, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned it to Al, but, from my perspective, it's become a little more complicated than I sort of thought. And that's fine. So it is a complicated challenge. It has, big impacts to the town, which we all know. And it is tightly tied to our 50-member volunteers, which we need to really respect, but really not let that over-influence, what the best choices are. And we all need to remain open for all the options, and understand the burdens that this choice could put on the town, but that the committee, is doing very good work. Everybody seems dedicated. It's been a difficult one because there's a lot of opinions, and there's been some discussion about possibly bringing an outside consultant in to help gather the data and understand it. So, I guess.
Could I add, the difficulty isn't just that there are a lot of opinions, it's surprisingly complex. There are a lot of different factors. At first I thought, well, it's just finances. That it's simple, it just comes right down to finances, but it's a lot more complex than that. What level of care do we want? What's our population like? It's just,
Type of calls do we have? How
Right.
many? Who should respond? How many should on? What level of care should be given at those calls? How should they be handled? Who should they be managed by? What are the procedures in
And-
place, the
and-
processes?
right, exactly. And then when it seems like, okay, we've got a clear question, like, we need more EMTs. Well, it turns out EMTs are really hard to find in Vermont, and paramedics, which is what we really need, are almost impossible to find. So that's just one example of how it just gets more and more complex. That's been a major difficulty.
Yeah, and I would say, though, that from where we were at the beginning, we've uncovered quite a bit. This committee has done a tremendous amount of work already. We've identified a whole list of different options. I asked the committee to respond to us as a board, which Renee has shared with us.
Yep.
To the select board, their opinions about where we are so far, and not that it's any sort of finalized opinions of the folks who responded, but sort of where they're thinking. One of the big themes that comes through, I don't know if you just said it, Phil, or you did, but the realization that having some sort of consultant type of scenario in this process to help guide us through this is of value. We may have that assistance internally, as in the town, not in the select board, but in the town, have come forward. And this person has attended the meetings. He's provided an initial draft of timelines and very granular step-by-step process. There's a lot that Al can attest to putting an ambulance on the road, more than just buying one. And yeah, Phil's looking at it right there, and that's the document that has been shared out as an example. It was very helpful to see this, which I saw for the first time this past Monday. And I had said to the committee when we left on Monday that for the time being, pending our conversation as a board tonight, although I didn't realize that Jeff was away. I thought Jeff was away next week. I thought he was going to be here today. That we not meet this coming Monday in an effort to have this conversation about, this is what we have so far. This is what the committee has come up with in 3 meetings. You've received some of their feedback. You've received some of the documents that we've all been looking at, conversations we've all been having. There's been a lot of notes taken at these meetings, and there's a couple of questions that the select board really kind of needs to help direct the committee's activities on. Namely, what is the level of patient care we're looking for? Are we looking to replace exactly St. Mike's and what they've been providing? Are we looking to do something a little bit more, a little bit less? We also want to know how we want the structure of an ambulance service in our town to exist. Do we want that to be outside contracted in? Do we want that to exist with our own ambulance? If it exists with our own ambulance, does everything exist in the fire department? Does it exist on its own? Does it exist in some combination of the two? And all the implications of that, which there are many. And furthermore, moving out into the future, how do we want, knowing that July 1st of 2020, when St. Mike's has said we're no longer your first provider, what will our service be on that date, knowing that a year from that date it'll be different, and a year from that date it'll be different, because where we're ultimately going, we're not going to get there July 1st of next year, because it takes time. And I think as a board, we may have been naively, maybe, a little short-sighted on how quick we could move
Yeah,
on
I would
this.
say I
You know,
probably
And I
was.
want to add to that,
And-
Aaron.
yes.
Aaron mentioned more than once that we needed to have a reset. So I would hope that we can talk about that as a board. And it is a great committee with people that know a lot, but
Tremendous
because
amount,
it's so
yeah.
complex, in my conversations with Aaron, I was thinking that a different configuration of a committee with some of these consultants might be much more effective.
Of which we've talked to already, some. It's also of note that 1, 2, 3, I think, people who live right here in Hinesburg, who are Hinesburg residents, also do this type of work professionally or have done it. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge sitting among us, which is one of the great things that has come out of this committee is these people have all stepped forward, in addition to people on the committee. That's been really, that wouldn't have happened if we didn't put this committee together. So that's really great too. So now it's time to talk about how we want to use these resources, getting to where we want to get to July 1st, and then ultimately where we're trying to get to long term.
So do you want that as an agenda item for next week?
Before I answer that, I think that I want to have that conversation tonight, with the select board, and like I said, ideally Jeff too, but we paused the meetings for a moment because I wanted to have us talk about this and get our heads around this. Maybe the board, I know Mary Lee is engaged already, but I guess Tom and Phil, are you prepared to sort of have those kind of conversations? Have you got your head around those kinds of questions, or do you still need time to have side conversations and do more in-depth thinking about this and talk to more people about this?
Well, I mean, I think one question, we're at a point now with the committee, is does the committee want to consider bringing in some outside consultants? And we have some potential people already, and so potentially, this board could have that discussion.
We came to that at the end. It wasn't anything that anybody voted on, but we can't really make decisions at this
No,
point.
well, yeah.
Because, anyway, Don recommended that, and so did Paul. Paul recommended Vermont League of Cities and Towns, that maybe they have resources, and if they don't, they should, because,
They don't
They
for
don't.
this,
okay,
not for
because
the
this is
ambulance.
something that many towns in Vermont are going to be facing. But,
But his sentiment was correct.
Yeah,
Or I
but
should
they-
say in agreement with.
yeah, they both felt
Yeah.
that a consultant would be really valuable, because we're really, all of us, I think, are just overwhelmed by all the details and how to find our way through the weeds here.
So from my understanding, that potentially one of the consultants is somebody local.
Yeah.
And,
Who's been in our audience twice.
yeah, so potentially, we are going into executive session for a separate issue. We might go in to discuss a potential contract and see, to have a discussion about that.
I would be in favor of that.
And any decision we make, whether we make it with Jeff or not, we'd have to come out of executive session
Certainly.
with that decision.
Yes.
Thank you.
It sounds like that, we can discuss, but it sounds like that's the next step. But before we were to do that, since it is potentially some people might be local people, I would think you'd have to have authorization to go forward with that. We don't know what the cost would be,
Correct.
but we know we've got a deadline.
Right.
And, we've got to Yeah, we've got a deadline. It's not one we necessarily will hit, but we've got a deadline and we need to be taking action. So I would hate to slow up the committee, much. And it sounds like you guys are on a roll too, so.
But that is a key point, that maybe not using the word deadline in this case, but timeline.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and say that it is an urgent matter, keeping with the puns, I guess, to continue to move forward with this, but to make sure that the time we're spending is well spent and reset.
Right, and I would not say the committee feels like we're on a roll. I think the feeling was that we learned, the first 2 meetings, we learned all this information, and then we realized there's really more than we can really comprehend as a group. And that's why people were saying it would be really helpful to have an outside consultant to lead the way and give us direction in what needs to be done.
Somebody who's been there before a little bit and knows what the next step is without having to figure it out as you're going through it.
Well, we are planning, there's some discussion about going into executive session to discuss, one item is to discuss personnel issue associated with the new chief. No, there's no trouble, just an item we need to close. And so if we think we need to do that, which I do think, we would need 2 motions to do that. Entertain a motion that premature, would place this personnel issue at risk, I guess, or,
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I'll let you read the verbiage since you have it there in front of you.
Yeah.
Unless you want me to grab it and take it.
No.
But
Before we go into executive session, do you want to deal with the warrants?
Oh, yes. Shall we do that?
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants, including payroll, as presented by Missy.
Second. You got it, Marilyn.
Okay.
You're on a roll tonight.
And they're right there.
Right here.
And they've been reviewed to some extent. And there is an additional sheet that
Yeah,
needs to be
that's what I
signed. I forget the reason. That's for the retirement fund?
Correct, yes. This is annual payment to the state of Vermont for VCDP principal and interest. State of Vermont gets 50%, town retains 50%, so yes.
Okay.
It's not retirement.
It's retirement.
So we've got them.
So to include this third,
It's not retirement, though.
not retirement.
Oh, okay. What is it?
The Vermont Community Development.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
completely.
okay. So the motion includes signatures of the board on that.
For, yes, the Community Development Fund.
So we have a motion and a second? All those in favor of approving the warrants and signing that sheet, say aye.
All right.
All right?
Aye, okay. So now we would need, if we move to executive session.
Do you have a question?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
2 things. One, reminder, Saturday is another compression only.
I saw the sign
9 to
there.
12 CPR class at the fire station.
So anyone can go.
Anyone can go,
And,
it's free.
and when you say compression only, and because that's like the new standard of, that's the most important piece.
Right, for public
Okay.
CPR, absolutely.
And the
Yeah.
time is
9
9
to noon.
to noon.
Yep, come drop in anytime.
And anyone can come
Anyone
and
can
learn
come,
that
and
skill.
it's free, yep. And the second thing is next Wednesday night, we're doing a barbecue at the fire station 6 to 7. Dan Betsy from the EMS office will be there to give us our First Responder of the Year award.
Oh, okay, so you guys haven't gotten that award
Tell the man
officially
to your
yet?
right.
Okay. Yeah,
So you're welcome to come have some.
So
next
that's-
Wednesday.
That's Wednesday, the 17th?
Yep.
And
Yep,
it's
6 to
6,
7, yeah, is the barbecue.
and during that time, you'll have a little formal thing.
Yep. Little presentation for us, so.
Okay, that's good
Okay.
information, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah.
Thank you, Al.
So, the first item is a personnel issue associated with hiring of the new police chief. And so we would need a motion to say that general public knowledge regarding this personnel issue will put us at a substantial disadvantage.
I will make that motion. That's helpful.
Second.
Okay, and at this would be the four of us, Joy and Renee.
Yeah.
And the second motion would be that we would enter into executive session, discuss this personnel issue under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
So moved. Or, yeah, that's what you're looking for.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then the second item would be to discuss a potential contract with the town, and premature public disclosure would put us at a substantial disadvantage. So I would move that we, for those reasons, we consider going into executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And so that we move into executive session to discuss this possible contract under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1A of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Aye.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ken, just a note that, so we'll end the broadcast, and so everybody knows, we can't take any actions in executive session. If we were to take some actions, we would come out of executive session, and they would be reflected in our minutes. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Yep.